What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Danielle Hallen, and I am back with another true crime video. And today we are going to be speaking about the disappearance of 27-year-old Pepita Redhair. She is one of many MMIW in the state of New Mexico, and following typical treatment of the indigenous population, her disappearance was not taken seriously. It wasn't investigated in a timely or proper manner, and her family has had to work endlessly on their own to try and get answers. And all of this was only exacerbated because she went missing just as COVID hit. So despite going missing in March of 2020, authorities didn't sit down with her family to talk to them about her disappearance at all until October of 2021. There was no initial media coverage, there were no searches, and the impact that has on cases is absolutely devastating. And I actually don't think there has ever been a single search since this happened back in 2020 at all by authorities. It's all been family effort. So let's get into the details. Let's share Pepita's face and help her family bring her home. Pepita, who is Navajo Nation, was born on August 4th, 1992 in Gallup, New Mexico. Literally just a few days older than me, which makes this case hit that much harder. She was raised there until she was about 5 years old when her family made the move to Crown Point, which is a very, very small town on a Navajo reservation. I think as of last year, the population was hovering just below 3,000. And according to those that knew Pepita best, she was such a happy little kid. She's always smiling. She has a huge heart, never sits still. She loves to draw, cook, and despite being in such a small town, Pepita could always find something to do. She was so adventurous. She loved skateboarding, and she could make friends with pretty much anyone that she met. And Pepita also loved to take care of people. She was very close to her family, especially her mom, who encouraged her at every single step. Pepita went on to graduate from Crown Point High School and ended up going to Navajo Technical College, which is in Crown Point, for 2 semesters where she got great grades, but Pepita had her eyes set on something bigger. She knew her whole life that she wanted more. She wanted to live in a bigger city. She wanted more opportunities. She wanted to make a name for herself. And Crown Point just wasn't going to get her any of that. It's not big. It's riddled with poverty. There's not a lot of options and job opportunities. So she ended up moving about an hour away from home to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this is quite the change because she went from a teeny tiny city to the largest city in all of New Mexico. She settled in so well. She was so happy. She loved it there. Pepita ended up being accepted into the University of New Mexico. She was getting great grades there as well. She had plans of becoming a teacher or potentially an engineer, and she had also been working a job as a cashier at a local Hot Topic. And then in 2016, she ended up meeting a guy named Nicholas K, who goes by Nick. Pepita's sister Shelda has stated that Nick and Pepita's relationship seemed amazing. They were both very affectionate toward each other. She always wanted to show him off or share what they were doing together, like even if they were just going to sit on the couch that night. She informed everybody of what was going on. Pepita was head over heels and she was willing to do anything for Nick because she wanted him to be happy. And within 6 months, she ended up moving into his home in Albuquerque where he lived with his dad. They were getting pretty serious, and around this time had even started talking about marriage. Pepita had asked her sister about traditional Navajo weddings. She wanted to know all of the details because Nick himself was also Navajo. So she was so excited to share their love for their culture together, to experience and start this new life, and it also made her family so proud as well. And over the next few years, Pepita just continued on. She was still in school. She was still working. She still maintained a very close relationship with her family. She would text her mom good morning every single day without fail, and then they would text or call or Facebook message back and forth all throughout the day. And Pepita would also frequently come back home to spend time with her family. She came back frequently enough that her mom kept her room set up all of this time. So Tuesday, March 24th, 2020, Pepita was in Crown Point. She was there to spend the day with her mom. They went to lunch together, they caught up, and late that afternoon, her mom, Anita, drove her back to her boyfriend Nick's house in Albuquerque. Pepita told her mom how much she loved her and to take care of herself and encouraged her to drive safely. But after that seemingly average day for Pepita, she ended up never being seen again. So the following day rolled around, Wednesday, March 25th, and Anita was shocked when she never received the good morning text from her daughter. She figured maybe she was just busy. There's some logical explanation for it. So her mom just continued on her day, assuming that Pepita would reach out to her at some point, like she always did. Anita continued checking her texts, her Facebook messages, but by the end of the day, there was still nothing from Pepita. And for the next few days, this continued. Anita anxiously awaited any sort of communication from her daughter. At this point, she was reaching out every way that they typically spoke, trying to get something, but still there was nothing. So by Saturday, the 28th, Anita attempted to reach out a few more times and even decided to try and reach out to Nick because after all, he lived with her, he'd been dating her for over 3 years. He had to have some idea where she was or what was going on or why she wasn't responding, but Nick wasn't responding either. So Anita went straight to Albuquerque Police Department to file Pepita as a missing person. Unfortunately, Anita was given the same runaround that so many other families get. Albuquerque Police Department told Anita that Pepita was an adult. She was free to come and go as she pleases. She had every right to leave and not tell anyone about it and would show up in a week or so. Anita was adamant that this was not something that Pepita would do. Pepita had never gone this long without contacting her mom or her sister, and if there had been any sort of issue where she planned to run off, her mom would have been the first person that she would have told. The police just continued to brush off all of her concerns. They were not taking it seriously, and they even told Anita that she wasn't reporting Pepita missing to the right department anyways. They told her that she needed to go to Crown Point Police Department instead. And if you have been around here for a while at all, you would know that the most common theme in MMIP cases is jurisdictional hot potato. Nobody seems to want to take any sort of responsibility for investigating any of these cases, so they pass it from one department to the next department to saying it's reservation police to it just goes all over the place. No one wants to touch it. And of course, Anita was confused when they told her this because Pepita didn't go missing in Crown Point. I mean, even she had the basic knowledge to know that you report someone missing where they went missing. Not only did she not go missing in Crown Point, but she didn't even live in Crown Point anymore, and she hadn't since 2016. But because APD wasn't taking her seriously at all, she decided to go to Crown Point anyways, hoping that maybe they would do something. At least it was another option. But as I'm sure you're guessing, Crown Point said, nope, APD has jurisdiction. There's nothing at all that we can do. So essentially, Pepita's family was left with no help. None at all. There were no police searches. There were no detectives offering any answers. Nobody helping them look for this healthy, happy 27-year-old that just vanished. So her family had to take matters into their own hands, and they started at the first place they felt they could get clues: Nick. Pepita's sister drove to his house that same day, March 28th. His home is surrounded by a large wall with a gated entrance, and the dogs in the yard keep most people away, or at the very least, like at a distance. So Shelda went to the gate, which is as far as she could go, and started to call out, hoping to get somebody's attention. She began to yell her sister's name, then to Nick himself. She's like, please, it's Pepita's sister. Is she in there? Does anyone know where she's at? And despite seeing someone open up the blinds to look outside, they quickly shut them, and no one ended up coming out to answer her pleas. And at this point, her family began to seriously worry. According to both Shelda and Anita, Pepita had recently confided in them that her relationship with Nick was not at all the rainbows and sunshine like it might have appeared from the outside. Just days prior to Pepita's disappearance, when she went home, she had actually come home because of how bad her relationship with Nick had gotten. Pepita showed up to her mom's house with a black eye, a swollen lip, and she told her family that Nick's drinking had just been way out of control. It led to horrible fights and now physical violence against her. Now, I don't know if she ever specified how long this had been going on, but her mom and sister both pleaded with her to move back home. They told Pepita that relationships like this never end well and that nobody deserves to be abused. But Pepita was so torn, as most people tend to be in abusive relationships. She had been holding on to this dream that she'd been manifesting for years. She wanted to marry Nick. She loved Nick, and she just told her family, I don't think he's going to do it again. And she went back. So obviously it was horrifying that the day she was dropped back off at his house, she goes completely silent. Nick's behavior was making things so much worse. He had been dating Pepita for years. They lived together, yet he hadn't reported her as missing or seemed to care or want anything to do with the fact that her family was out there searching for her. If Pepita was totally fine, why didn't he answer any of her family's calls for days? It was just a real weird situation. And so when her sister decided that day to go to Nick's house, she said it was because she was scared Pepita was maybe being held hostage or something inside. So the fact that not only was Nick not answering calls, but someone in the house clearly saw them and didn't come out was even more suspicious, but they had no choice but to keep on looking. Obviously, no one there wanted to talk to them, so they had to move forward. Pepita's family went to Albuquerque and started to drive and walk around in all of the areas that Pepita would frequently hang out. And as I told you in the beginning of this video, Pepita made friends with everybody. So despite being in this massive city, so many people knew her. And when they were out passing flyers, so many people would say, oh yeah, I see her around all the time. She's a great girl. I haven't seen her in a few days. And most of them were shocked that she had gone missing. And this just gave her family even more of a sinking feeling. Despite having no money to do so, her family also got together and printed out as many flyers as they could afford. And they started to put these all over town, hoping that someone would see her and call, because so far authorities still weren't doing anything and she wasn't in the media. They started to put these flyers up in all of the regular spots that she went. They also went to Nick's neighborhood and posted them around there. They put flyers on people's doors and in people's mailboxes and spoke to anyone that was willing to talk to them, but it felt like they were no closer to any answers. Pepita also didn't have a car, so her family went to all of the local bus stops because she heavily relied on buses as a form of transportation. They spoke to the drivers, regular bus users, but still nobody had seen Pepita. And without any information from Nick as to when he last saw her, if she said she was going somewhere, they didn't really have a good way to focus any of their efforts. It was just like finding a needle in a haystack. And despite knowing everyone was searching for Pepita, Nick still wasn't showing up to help or reaching out and talking to anyone. Pepita's mom, Anita, continued to text her phone and call her phone, hoping that she would eventually text back and just explain all of this, that this was some big misunderstanding and, something happened and she was fine. But that is not at all what ended up happening. On Monday, March 30th, a few days after Pepita had been reported as missing, a text came in to Anita's phone from Pepita's phone number, but it wasn't Pepita. It was actually a homeless man instead. Now, this man explained that he had absolutely no idea who Pepita was, but he had just purchased this phone that clearly belonged to her from some random guy. Now, I don't think he went into any detail about who this person was, but that was not a good sign. So not only is Pepita now missing, but someone is selling her belongings, and that usually does not lead to anything good. Now, despite all of this sketchy information that was already swirling around about Pepita's disappearance, police were still refusing to do anything. Her family called, they emailed, they did all that they could asking for help. But at this point, the pandemic had hit, and everything was just utter chaos. Nobody was allowed in the police department. Face-to-face meetings were not a thing. A lot of officers were likely out sick. It was just a disaster, which made it that much easier to ignore Pepita's case and not really do anything. This took such a blow to Pepita's case because they lost so much potential information. If the police had gone to speak to the person that bought her phone, maybe they would know who had sold it, and maybe that person would lead to what happened to Pepita. If they had done an interview with Nick, maybe they'd know when she was physically last seen, when she had last been at his house, but they just didn't. Anytime Pepita's family would get a hold of someone eventually at the police station, APD, they still were just ran around in circles. They were again told to go to Crown Point, or they were told to go to Navajo Police, and at this point they'd already been told that Crown Point couldn't help, and so they went to Navajo Police just in case, and they were told the same thing. Pepita didn't go missing from the reservation, so they couldn't do anything to help. Family was basically backed into a helpless corner. So they started to reach out to the media, hoping that maybe someone would at the very least show her picture, help spread awareness so that maybe if police aren't looking for her, the public could be, and maybe someone with information could come forward. But even the media refused to speak about her. I do know that typically the media will go to the police department first to get details and permission to do a story like that. So it's very likely that they said no because APD said no. And why on earth would they say no? If they knew that they were in a position to not actively be out there searching for Pepita because of the pandemic or questioning people because of the pandemic, why wouldn't they do the one thing they could do to get out information about her and gather tips? It breaks my heart knowing how helpless her family probably felt to be told no. It was like Pepita meant absolutely nothing to anybody. By early April, 2 weeks after Pepita had gone missing, her family was continuing on their own, and they decided that they were going to have their first organized search. Now, they planned to check out West Mesa, and this area is very remote, has a scary history in regards to being a dumping ground for not just mass amounts of trash, but also bodies. And so they were worried that maybe Pepita ended up out there because it's just this endless rolling desert terrain. And so before they went out for the search, they figured they would reach out to APD one more time to ask for help. Like, will you come out and help us search? Will you give us guidance? Will you bring out cadaver dogs or just scent dogs of some kind to help us search the area? But APD refused to help, so her family ended up out there alone. You guys, Pepita's family walked through this entire desert area, checking every bush, and they were carefully going through trash bag after trash bag with long sticks and gloves, horrified with every new bag that they might find Pepita. They never should have had to do that on their own. That is not something that should have been on their shoulders. But despite their long searches in this area, they never ended up finding any sign of Pepita. And then on April 19th, almost a month after Pepita went missing, and knowing that she had already been reported as missing, Nick suddenly shows up to APD and wants to report Pepita as missing himself. Now, according to what Nick told the police, Pepita had been totally fine the night of the 24th after her mom dropped her off, was fine on the 25th and the day of the 26th. And he said this is where something obviously went wrong. Now, that night of March 26th, Nick said that he and Pepita went out drinking. And sometime that night, they met up with a man that he said was named Lamey. Now, I've seen it reported in some places that at some point Nick said he and Pepita got into an argument and she walked out of wherever they were. I have no idea if this was at the home they were living in or somewhere else. There's other places that report that Nick claimed that he and his dad went to a local Circle K around 11, and when they came back, she was gone. But either way, Pepita allegedly walked out on foot alone and never came back. Nick claimed that the following day, March 27th, Pepita ended up sending him a text message. She said that she was with another man, and Nick told police that he speculated this man was likely that Lamey guy that they had met the night before. After this, Nick said he had no more communication with Pepita and he had no idea where she was. He just figured that she had run off with another guy. Now, I have no clue if Nick said why it took him a month to report her as missing, or if he explained to police why he hadn't reached out to her family or assisted them with searches or, done anything at all to show that he cared about this young woman that he had been dating for years at this point. But honestly, I doubt police even asked any of those questions to begin with. And according to what has been released, this was the only time they even spoke to Nick at all. What a shady situation. And despite the fact that Pepita has now been reported as missing for a second time, police still did not search for her. They didn't go to Nick's home where she was living to search it. They didn't question his family. They still didn't question Pepita's family. Absolutely nothing. So her family continued to search for her on their own and also started to try and figure out who this Lamey guy was. Because maybe after yet another fight with Nick, like he claimed happened, she started to rethink what her mom and sister said about leaving Nick, that she didn't deserve what he was doing to her. Maybe she ran away with this Lamey guy to get away from Nick. Now, over the next few months, her family received call after call from people reporting sightings of Pepita. And of course, the police aren't the ones going to check these tips. It is her family. And so each time they dropped everything to rush out to these locations, hoping that by some miracle, it really was her and they'd be able to bring her home. And each time it was just someone that looked similar. And honestly, I don't know if it would be worse to have sightings reported where the person's very obviously not your loved one, or if it's worse that it looks like them and when you get there for a minute, you believe that you are about to find someone that you've been searching for, and it's just someone that looks similar. But one particular sighting reported on May 20th, 2020, suggested a very frightening possibility of what could have happened to Pepita that I don't think was really at the top of anyone's radar at the time. An anonymous woman called in and told Pepita's family that they saw her at a place called City Park. And so her mom and sister did what they did every single time they got one of these sightings. They dropped everything and hopped in the car and began to Google map every single place nearby called City Park. And there were quite a handful of places with this name. And so they just started the rounds, and at each place there ended up being nothing. And then suddenly they noticed something pretty strange. There was a place called City Park, but it was inside of a hotel. And so they're like not sure really what to think about this, but obviously they have to go and check it out. And when they get there, the vibe is not right. So the hotel was really run down. The windows were all kind of like covered up, but it was obviously still open and in use. But there was also a man sitting on a bike with a walkie-talkie at the entrance. And so that was definitely weird and one of the first things that they noticed. But then it was even weirder when they go into the parking lot and drive past a second guy on a bike with a walkie-talkie. And then they drive further into the parking lot and there is a third guy on a bike with a walkie-talkie. And all three of these guys are just staring at them the entire time they're driving through the parking lot. And you could say maybe this was security, but these were all guys dressed in street clothes. They did not look the part. They just seemed like random guys in this parking lot, up to no good. And then at the very back of the parking lot was probably the most alarming thing. And it was a line of vans. All of these vans had tinted windows, all of them with different out-of-state license plates. So after they saw this and they so far saw no sign of Pepita, they got the heck out of there. And this experience had them considering the possibility that maybe Pepita was trafficked. I mean, every single thing about that situation just screams trafficking. But without authorities helping them, how on earth were they going to look into a possibility like that? It all just felt so out of control at this point. Then something good happened. They ended up finding Lamey, who was actually a guy named Laramie. And he wasn't just some random guy that Pepita had just met the night before she went missing. Laramie ended up reaching out himself to Pepita's mom. He saw a Facebook post that they had made where they were trying to locate him, and And so he came forward to the family and wanted to help any way he could to clear things up. And Laramie ended up telling her family that he did in fact know Pepita. He had known her for a little while at this point, but he definitely wasn't with her, and she had never run off with him. And there was no way that he was the last to see her. Laramie said that he very vividly remembered the last time he saw Pepita because it was on his birthday, which was March 10th, 2 whole weeks before Pepita even disappeared. So far, what Laramie's saying is not at all matching up with what Nick is. Laramie claimed that Pepita bought him a cupcake that day and sang him happy birthday, and apparently Nick did not like this at all. According to Laramie, Nick started to argue with Pepita. He seemed to be jealous, and as things escalated, Laramie decided he was just going to leave because he felt like he had caused Pepita problems when she was just trying to do something nice for a friend. And as he was leaving, he claimed that he saw Nick hit Pepita. And after this, he never saw or heard from her again. Now, what's interesting about this is that this would have been just before Pepita went home, where she had been bruised and swollen. So that alone could possibly confirm Laramie's story. His story is also very similar to what Nick claimed happened, except Nick claimed it happened 2 weeks after Laramie did, which would be, again, right around the time that Pepita vanished, which would be very convenient. But again, with the lack of investigative efforts, there was no telling who was being honest here. Phones weren't checked, Laramie was never spoken to, and unfortunately, in 2021, Laramie passed away, taking whatever else he may have known with him. It just feels like blow after blow with this case. In May of 2021, a year had passed at this point since Pepita went missing. There still had been no media coverage. Authorities still hadn't even spoken to her family to do any sort of formal interview, to ask about Pepita, but her family was able to finally arrange a time to pick up Pepita's belongings that had been sitting at Nick's house this entire time. I have no idea if he was there when they picked this stuff up, if he spoke to them, tried to give them any sort of clarity, or if he left it up to someone else so he wouldn't have to deal with it. But what I do know is that her family carefully took the clothing that they last saw her wearing, which was at his house, and placed it into bags in case it needed to be used by police. In what world should families have to search trash bags for the remains of their loved ones and bag their own freaking evidence because police aren't doing it? And in the midst of all of this, Pepita's father passed away without knowing if she was okay. And then right around the 1.5 year mark of Pepita's disappearance, still absolutely nothing's being done by anyone other than family, Gabby Petito went missing. And Pepita's family watched as she had international coverage and had to ask themselves why Pepita still had none. Why had her face not been shared once in the media? Why had her story not been told by anyone? So they decided to take things a step further because Pepita deserved just as much attention and care and time as anyone else that goes missing. And so they began to plan for a rally because they watched it work for Gabby Petito. Maybe it would work for Pepita. And her family even said there was something about like the similarity of the names. They just felt like it was their time to get loud. So on October 3rd, 2021, instead of holding a small rally, which was their initial plan to pass out flyers and raise awareness, it turned into a huge protest, not just for Pepita, but for all of the missing and murdered Indigenous women in the area, which there are a lot.
Today I'm very emotional. It's not easy.
She's speaking out on the epidemic of missing Indigenous women, like her daughter Pepita. Pepita was last seen March 2020 in Albuquerque.
I search, I pray. There's hopes that one day she'll call. I'm going to continue search for her.
As the search continues, King says it doesn't get easier, a feeling Rose Yezi knows too well.
And my daughter's name is Renelle Rose Bennett. I'm sorry. Well, she went missing June the 15th of this year.
Their frustrations leading them right here to Tigway Park. Now organizers, community leaders, and supporters are all demanding justice, not just for Pepita and Renelle, but also for all missing and murdered Indigenous women.
All of these Native families, they felt alone. You know, they felt that their voices, that they're not enough, you know, that they don't matter just because they're Indigenous.
Many coming together with signs, marching for justice.
It's a lot because we all get together, like, I didn't know that there was a lot of people, missing their loved ones.
It seems like, I'm getting more support and I'm not alone anymore. I don't feel alone anymore.
And it gathered a ton of attention. And within a week, suddenly, APD had an interest in speaking to Pepita's family to get, quote, their side of the story. It is asinine that it takes national coverage and a protest and infuriation from an entire community for the police department to say, maybe we should talk to this family after a year and a half. And in pretty much the first public statement that police ever gave, they acknowledged the fact that there had been a domestic history with Nick, and they also said that Pepita's case had gone cold. How is that? Just think about that for a minute, okay? Think about the fact that the first time police speak about a case, they're saying the case is cold. That's not okay. APD went on to say that there was an investigator on the case, but they didn't really speak on what they had done so far or what they plan to do. It was just that very brief statement, and that was it. And sadly, this isn't a unique situation in this area. In 2019, the MMIW task force was established in New Mexico to try and help prevent these kinds of things. And their findings concluded that despite having the 5th largest Indigenous population in the country, New Mexico also had the highest number of MMIP cases in the country. And they found that of 92 MMIP cases that were active, only 5 had been solved in a 5-year time span. And it wasn't like there was nothing at all to suggest something nefarious was going on here, that foul play was a possibility. I mean, you have this young woman who has always been very responsible, is in school, she has a job, she's got a history of constant communication, all of a sudden goes missing after showing up at her family's house with a black eye and a busted lip, claiming there's domestic violence going on. And there was documented history of it even. The police had been called out a handful of times to the home. One of those times was, I believe, in January of 2020, so just prior to when all of this happened. According to photographs of the records that were put on a documentary about this was in regards to Pepita and Nick. I know that multiple different sources out there have stated that there were many people living in the home, so, they weren't able to tell if this was in fact about them, but these documents prove that it was. They had both claimed there had been a verbal altercation. They both said there wasn't anything physical at this time, and Nick actually left the house so that nothing more happened. And not just that, there are even medical records to continue supporting this. Pepita's family were able to get a hold of her medical records that showed she had been to the hospital numerous times. And on a handful of these, when it says reasons for visit, victim of assault is put down there. Despite this statement being made by police, finally, it still didn't seem like there was much going on. So Pepita's family continued to hold rallies, and it did continue to get attention, thankfully. And so in September of 2022, Disappeared aired her case, which was the largest bit of coverage that her case had gotten this entire time so far, in 2 years. And then in August of 2023, it was also aired on Never Seen Again. And both of these episodes are great. I suggest you guys go and watch them so you get to hear from Pepita's sister, from her mom. In both of these episodes, unfortunately, APD refused to make any sort of comment. They would not come and speak about what is going on. Now, I do know that at some point, APD handed the case over to the Attorney General, but I haven't seen any information really being released from them either. The only thing that's been said is that there are currently no suspects or persons of interest in the case. Now, the one person that has said something is DA Raul Torres. He has come forward to speak about current efforts, but this was a couple of years ago at this point. The DA apparently sat down and heard Pepita's family out. He listened to their concerns and their complaints, and he immediately put 2 investigators on the case to actually do something, basically to make up for all of this lost time. And they did apparently manage to get a few warrants. They were able to collect electronic data. They went to the FBI. They took statements from people, but I have no idea idea who, and they also took evidence from Pepita's family that her family had been clinging onto for years, waiting for this moment. They also did what they could all of these years later to get a DNA profile on Pepita to be able to run it through different databases for Jane Doe's and also for potential further use. I just really wish it hadn't taken years for this to be done. Like, I want to know, did Pepita really send that text saying that she was running off with this guy? Like, where did her phone ping when she sent that text? Did her phone have any other activity between when she allegedly left to run off with this guy and when she texted Nick the following day? Like, I feel like there were so many ways they could have tracked her movements to confirm what Nick had said, or to confirm what Laramie said, but I just really hope it didn't get lost after all of that time. Now, as of a year ago, April 2023, Anita stated in an article that not much has changed, unfortunately. She has no idea still if anyone is investigating. Nobody is communicating with her. It's heartbreaking, okay? Anita broke down every single time she spoke about her daughter in any interview. She is so devastated, and it just fills me with rage knowing that Pepita's family feels so alone in this. Like, if you put yourself in their shoes for even just a moment, think about people that you love and imagine if not a single person who is supposed to help you was actually doing so. They are just left to hope that the right thing is being done and hope that somebody cares enough, and that's just not good enough. It's really not good enough.
Her voice.
She will never be with us. I'm going to stay strong and continue to pray for hopes.
Filled with heartbreak.
Her dad passed away September 28th this year. He didn't get the closure. That was kind of like the saddest thing that happened as well. I promised him that we're going to find our daughter.
This is Pepita Redhair.
Her favorite hobby was skateboarding and talking to people.
The two love to cook together, but that hasn't happened since March 27th of 2020.
That's when we dropped her off at her boyfriend's house in South Valley. That was the last time I seen her, the last time I spoke with her.
On March 24th, Anita King, Pepita, and two other family members were driving to this neighborhood near Central and 114th to drop off Pepita.
Last time I spoke with her, said goodbyes, gave her a hug.
Then 3 days went by.
On a Friday, the 27th, I tried calling her. I tried texting her, and my intuition right away told me something was wrong. And I tried Monday on the 30th again. I tried texting her. That's when her phone was stolen.
She says a man texted back saying he bought the phone from someone. Since then, Anita and her family have searched all over Albuquerque for Pepita.
We set up flyers, post flyers, talking to people on the street buses. We post flyers everywhere.
Look closely at her photo.
Getting up in the morning, she's on my mind. I want my daughters, my family, want closure.
And as she keeps pushing for answers.
I have hopes that I would see her. She would just come back in and come home, walk in and say, Mom, I'm home. We're hoping for that. If she's not there, you know, it's going to be hard.
Pepita's family does have an active GoFundMe, and in all of this time, all of these years, it's only reached $1,500. I watched a more recent missing persons GoFundMe raise almost $120,000 in 1 month, okay? Pepita's family struggles to have enough money to print flyers. They need help. If they had that kind of energy when Pepita first went missing, if they had all of these people to support them and have their back and give donations, they could have hired their own dog teams to help the search because APD wouldn't provide them. They could have not only printed out millions more flyers, but they also could have had billboards. The disparities here are just absolutely catastrophic. So please, you guys, share this story. Go and donate if you are able to. Someone sold Pepita's phone. Someone knows where she is or what happened to her. Pepita has brown hair, brown eyes. She is 5'1". She weighed around 141 pounds when she went missing. She does have 2 moles on her chin and a scar on her left eyebrow that could help a lot in identification. She also has a handful of tattoos. Pepita has a moon with lightning on her left leg, a butterfly on her shoulder. She has a dinosaur on her right forearm, and a koi fish on her left forearm, and she even has her last name, Redhair, tattooed somewhere on her body. It genuinely seems like foul play is involved, especially because it has been this long. If Pepita felt like she was in any sort of danger, I feel like after a few years had passed, she would feel safe enough to at least contact someone. You don't go your entire life being that close to your mom and your sister and then just drop off the face of the earth without feeling some sort of need to reach out and say something. That's all that I've got for you guys today. Please, again, make sure to share this story, share her missing persons flyer, and donate to the GoFundMe if you can. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to Pepita's story. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below to become a part of the Hallen fam so that we can hopefully bring them home together or bring them justice together, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.